Welcome to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox and Dannielle Bryan. We are here talking about all sorts of different things that come together in the way of uplifting your life, learning new skills, seeing things from different perspectives, and then always ending with a wine to pair with whatever lesson we've learned over the course of, because through both ends of this, both sides of that, we will grow and be able to learn more about life and deal with life in a better way. So one of the things that today we're talking about fire ceremonies and letting go. And this was my pick of the topic because one of the most valuable things that I've learned from Dannielle was what she calls a fire ceremony. I'm sure this is more universal than just her, but a fire ceremony, and it is associated in my mind with letting go of things in your life. But perhaps I've just put it into that part of my brain, and maybe it's involved in a lot more than that. So I'd like to start the show with asking you, Dannielle, to give us the shamanic view of what a fire ceremony is, because you've talked about them a lot, you've used them a lot with me, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it again.
Yes, fire ceremonies. So fire ceremonies are not just relegated to this particular shamanic path. It's a ceremony and a tool and a ritual and a gathering that many different traditions use. And the way we talk about it in, my world, I guess we could call it that, is we talk about it as the medicine men and women who have been conducting and holding fire ceremonies around the planet for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I mean, thousands, right? Fire.
Right, fire. Right.
So it's something that has always been used to bring something significant to the fire. And when we think about it, what happens around fire? Let's pull this out of being some spiritual tradition right now and look at gathering around the family hearth. Look at what fire, the warmth, right? It brings people together. Camping.
Focal point, right?
Yep. A lot of different kinds of gatherings will use fire to be the central point. Let's meet around the fire pit. We'll gather around the fire. We'll make s'mores around the fire. I mean, really.
Weddings, lighting the candle
yes.
together of the new flame.
Yes. So to recognize that we have all been using fire to be a significant central point for many different kinds of things. And what we're going to talk about today is one way of using fire. Okay, so what I do in this path is this path, the shamanic path, rooted in the Andean traditions of South America. And again, remember, and I've talked about this in previous shows, the shamanic path is one of many around the planet. This is one of many. So there's all kinds of different indigenous tribal paths and traditions and ceremonies and such. So in the path that I study, we talk about it being a path of fire and a path of transformation. So fire ceremonies are very central to the way in which we work with any kind of transformation, any kind of letting go, any kind of claiming or calling in. And it also, in many other earth traditions, even, do I dare say it, but I'm going to, pagan traditions, which I'm fond of, by the way.
Yes.
But it has a connotation when you start talking about pagan traditions and all
yeah.
that stuff. We just think about like naked people dancing around a fire at midnight.
Animal
in the woods
and
of England.
maiden sacrifices.
Yeah, all that stuff. But anyway, so they've used fire often to be a central point for something pivotal that is happening. And a lot of times it will center around natural cycles. So you'll often hear of people doing fire ceremony around a full moon. Hear of fire ceremonies being held on the new moon. Hear of fire ceremonies being held on the solstices, on the equinoxes. So it often relates to, natural cycles and rhythms that are happening. But outside of that, fire ceremony is something that we can use anytime, all the time. And it is a beautiful and wonderful way to step into a personal ceremony or to step into personal ritual or to use it as a tool for moving through something or navigating something, because fire is fast transformation, right? When we think about what we're doing when we're coming to a fire ceremony and we are bringing something to fire and we talk about it in this language, we're making an offering to the fire. And so what is that offering? Are we releasing something, letting go of something? Are we marking a transition in our life? Are we actually recognizing, honoring, and claiming something? All of these things can be recognized in the fire, and we traditionally will bring a stick, because guess what? Sticks burn easy. You can bring paper. You can have written things down and bring your paper to the fire and burn it. But to bring a stick to the fire, and in this path, the way I teach it, the way we hold ceremony, is that we have that stick or that object that we're going to burn, and we use our breath to transfer the feeling of what we're working with into that stick, and then offering it to the fire, which then gets brought through an alchemical process of transformation, right? And what is fire? It's the combustion of a material object into light. And so it's released when that happens, right? We make our offering to the fire, it's combusted into light, and it's released and it's offered up. Legend and lore has it, and this is across the board in many traditions, that as that combustion happens, it's the releasing of the light, and then in the smoke that is released from the burning, it is offered up as your prayer. It's offered up to the heavens, to God, to great creator, to great spirit, to grandfather sky, however we may relate to that higher power, to the cosmos. It's offered up as prayer, and the winds carry the smoke to the four corners of the earth.
Oh, beautiful.
And they're released, and then your prayers or your intention or whatever it is that you brought will be received by spirit and will be answered.
I see.
Okay, so this is the high overarching kind of holding of what are we doing when we come to a quote unquote fire ceremony. We are actually engaging in a prayer offering. And so this is not something that is only for people who practice some kind of, shamanic path or indigenous medicine path. This could be for anybody of any belief system to recognize that we can work with fire as a path of transformation. And with our intention, we can bring our prayers to the fire and allow for stepping into ritual, which, side note, by the way, when we step into ceremony and ritual, Kirsten, it actually helps us to bypass the limbic brain and get out of fight or flight and actually access the prefrontal cortex, or what we know as what is also referred to as the God brain. So it gets us out of the limbic brain, moves us into the prefrontal cortex, and it helps us to access that God brain, which puts us into a different way of relating with ourselves. We're not caught in that logic, analytical, fight or flight, everything has to make sense part of our reasoning brain, and it moves us into a different area of our brain, which is the same area of the brain that things like meditation and prayer and walking meditation and those kinds of practices moves us into that part of our brain. And ceremony and ritual moves us into that part of our brain. And ritual could be a loaded word. I recognize that as I say that, but I want to convey what is ritual. Making your coffee in the morning is ritual. Whatever your routine is before you go to bed at night, that's ritual. It's that thing where you step in and you go, this is my process. And you drop into it and you relax into it. And you recognize it as the familiar practice that helps you get to whatever that point is. If it's a bedtime ritual, it helps you get into that state where now you're going to crawl into bed and you're like, okay, like, now I'm ready for sleep, right? Yeah. Or in the morning, it's that ritual that then, soon that tea or that coffee will be ready, right? So ritual from the standpoint of it's that thing that we're very familiar with that moves us into a different place of our brain. When we're in that ritual, whatever it is for any of us. I mean, some people, their ritual in the morning is to wake up and take their dog for a walk, right? And so recognize that all these things that we do that put us into a certain state are acts of ceremony and ritual. And we talk about this a lot in the classes that I teach, that we don't want to regulate, our ceremony and our ritual, if you will, to only certain times in our life, but rather we want to recognize that we can bring ceremony and ritual to everything that we're doing, which helps us to, again, move into a different region or to access different perceptual states. So, fire ceremony.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I can see why I thought, so I'm such a practical person, and, I've just begun on this path of enlightenment and enrichment on a non-real reality plane. I mean, it's all very new still. But I could see, based on what you just described, that when I have been exposed to fire ceremonies, just because of my practical nature, I've been needing to let go of things. It hasn't been as much recognizing. Although I will say I did one time use a fire ceremony with my daughter in a special camping trip we did, and it wasn't about letting go. Well, it was about a transformation. Yeah. So for her I did, but for me, apparently I also have a lot of I can't swear online. I'm not going to swear. Anyway, so the way that I've always thought of this is taking something that has been challenging me and bringing it to the fire ceremony, having a stick, blowing, or a toothpick, as you pointed out at one point, because I didn't have a fireplace, and so that I could have access to, and so we can talk about the procedural elements in a minute, but I found the reason that I brought this up as the topic is I have a friend who's been going through a really challenging time with a management person at a building she's in, and she had she's been in a lot of crisis with this, and she's interpreted what he has been doing as aggression, and she's gotten personally worried about it. So she was approaching trying to get restraining orders and a lawsuit and all this, and she doesn't have the money to do all of this. And I suggested, because I was trying to help her, I suggested perhaps blowing her angst and her trauma and all that into, because she can leave this situation. This isn't permanent. She doesn't have to get a divorce or all this. She's like, she can just walk away. And I just said, maybe just leaving it behind and using a fire ceremony, blowing the pain and the suffering and what she, wants to leave behind into the stick. But then also as, and you could please explain this better, because I probably didn't do the best job of this, but I said, and also then what are the gifts that she's gotten from this experience that this man has pushed her through to keep with her. So I guess it was about a transformation, not as much about just letting go.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could talk about that, because to me, if you think of a fire, you've taken the stick, you've blown something into it. If I want to blow in stuff that I want, I feel really weird blowing stuff into a stick that I want and then putting it in a fire and then watching it go up in smoke. It's like gone. But then again, you just explained the winds carry it off to the rest of the world and the prayers are answered. So maybe that, I guess I just learned. But that's why I'm so curious about this fire ceremony, because I was trying to advise someone of how to use it, and I got myself a little bit kind of messed up in the middle. I was like, wait, are you supposed to blow the good stuff into the stick? I don't understand where that goes.
Yeah.
So maybe will you take us through what a fire ceremony looks like, so that I can remember next time I have a friend who needs this.
Yeah. And, Kirsten, it's bringing stuff that we're navigating and those things that are challenging for us to a fire is a beautiful process. And most of us we get that. We get the right, this is hard for me. I need to bring some transformation to it. I need to get it up out of my body. I need to blow it into something, and I need to burn it. Right? I need to get rid of it. Okay, that makes some logical sense.
I did a huge fire ceremony after my cancer treatments were done, and it was all the directions and the paint and the prescription notes, and I was like, here, burn it.
Right. So there is something even cathartic about that, right? And we're watching it and we're seeing it burn and we're saying, yes, I am done with this. Yes. And so it's really, really relative and really important. So it's recognizing that this is a beautiful process to let go of something. And it's also a beautiful process to mark a claiming. And I think this is what you're asking, right? That place of, okay, wait a minute, do you blow the good stuff in?
I know, I'm very confused.
What is going on with that? And so recognize that on one hand, sometimes we have things that we need to let go. So that was something I probably would have said to your friend as well. Well, you can take this to a fire ceremony to get it up out of your body, release it, and to also mark that transformation of, I'm letting this go. I don't need to carry this around anymore. I don't need to let this thing rent space in my head for as many hours a day as it has been, whatever that might be. And to do a ritual, which means you're actually engaging in the process. She wasn't at home sitting in bed thinking about doing a fire ceremony.
Right.
It's about go out, build your fire, you do it. You're moving through the steps. And that also engages a whole region of our brain and our body. It's that muscle memory. It's that I am doing this thing. I am blowing this energy. I am putting it in the fire. I am watching it burn. I am releasing this. And so everything about that ritual, that action, is supportive to, I'm ready to be done with this. And so it's really, really powerful. Very different than sitting in a chair and thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me think about how I would do a fire ceremony, right? So it's the engaging of the process. Now, likewise, if we're wanting to claim something, it is also the engaging of the process. It's saying, I am ready to claim this. So the gifts from the situation. And we talk about this all the time in the work that I do, because we don't want to just be like, okay, I'm done with this next. We want to look at, okay, this has been challenging for me, and there's something that has been cultivated. I have learned something. What is that I've learned? And we want to recognize what we've learned so that we can own, if you will, that lesson. That it's not just outside of self. It's not just looking from an internal perspective outside, the way I'm looking at my coffee mug right now and saying, there's a mug, right? We tend to do that with our lessons. Well, I learned that. Okay. That thing over here outside of self.
Yeah.
And what we want to recognize from an energetic standpoint is that, yes, we want to recognize it. We want to see it here, but what we want to do is be able to recognize it and see it here, and then be able to actually feel it inside and say, not only do I see that I have cultivated courage, I recognize that I now know how to be courageous because I can feel what it feels like. I can embody and claim this resource that I have cultivated and grown from this experience. And now I want to bring in the informing of it. It's as if you're downloading an app on your phone. Mm-hmm. Okay, out there in the land of wherever you buy your apps are all kinds of things that you can go buy. And we can scroll through our thing. We can be like, oh yeah, that app, but we haven't claimed it yet.
Oh, because they're just out there.
Because they're just out there
waiting
to be claimed. You claim it by clicking on it and then deciding that, yes, I want to install this. And you hit install and then it downloads onto your phone and now you can open it and now you actually have that app.
Yes.
So our gifts, our lessons, those places where we've cultivated something, we don't want it to just live out there in the app store. We actually want to click on it and install it.
That's so she would what I was missing, or I just got confused about, was the fact that that the process of a fire ceremony can also help with the recognition that allows you to bring the gift into yourself. Like, because she showed so much courage and everything through this whole thing. So if she just looked at it from afar and didn't honor that in herself for the courage it took and all that, it would have stayed out there. But if you can allow it in via the ceremony of fire, I see. Okay.
So blowing that in, saying, yes, I have cultivated courage. I recognize that about myself. I'm going to take this minute and I'm really going to feel what it feels like to be in that place of courage. And you'll get a feeling in your body. And you take that and you blow that into that stick from the place of claiming. And when you place it into the fire, what you're doing is you're making that offering and saying, I claim this as my resource. And as it moves into fire and it combusts and it turns into light, and the smoke goes off to the heavens, and your prayers are seen and recognized and honored and held by the ancestors, that's that moment where you are making that claiming. You are saying, I now accept and own and embody this very thing that I've cultivated. And it's that action of saying yes. And so that's how we can use fire ceremony to actually claim the positive and mark that claiming for ourselves.
So do you need 2 sticks? Like, I'm trying to
simplify this, I will say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can have 2 sticks.
Because if you blow the bad stuff, you want it to go. Okay.
To simplify it for all of you and Kirsten, 2 sticks is perfect. Okay. It's great. 1 stick for the letting go stick. 1 stick for the claiming. It's wonderful. Does it have to be that way? Actually, no. Because if we pop it up into a different way of looking at the energetics, it's all one. Because it's in that thing that you're ready to let go that helped you to cultivate that gift.
Yes.
And so it's the honoring of, I'm done with this and I recognize what the gift is, and the whole thing is one complete package. But that's easy
at the
for me to say.
Beginner level. Get yourself 2 sticks. Label them. Get your Sharpie out. One says letting go. The other says claiming.
Actually, we do this great process in class where we actually do use toothpicks. You talked about a toothpick.
Yeah, toothpicks.
And we use toothpicks and we go get those little labels that would like mark a page in a book, little mini
like the
sticky
brightly
notes.
colored kind of stuff.
And we will wrap it around a toothpick and we will write on it what we're actually letting go or claiming. And so they are actually labeled. But that just keeps nice, neat order for people who like nice, neat order. Yes.
You can't just remember everything they need to let go of.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have like a whole table filled with all those. So that's really great. I want to take a break for a sec and just take a deep breath, and then I want to come back and talk about not using sticks, but using rocks.
Okay. Yeah.
So
great.
we're going to take a little break here, guys. We'll be right back. Thank you to Uplift Gift, our sponsor today. Uplift Gift is a gift box company that you can use to send beautiful, comforting items to your friends around the country who may be going through challenging times. These days when it is harder to get out and grab a bunch of beautiful things from around different stores in your area and then box them up and get them to the post office, Uplift Gift is there for you to select lovely items, including caramels and beautiful organic teas and a pashmina that you can send to your friends around the country if they need some uplifting. So thank you again to Uplift Gift for sponsoring the show today.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders. Inspiration for your life and your wine glass.
Welcome back, you guys. We're talking about fire ceremonies. I'm learning. It takes me at least 4 or 5, goes around. What is it, around the horn to really pick stuff up. So this helps me just understand this a lot more. We're talking about fire ceremonies, and if you missed the last segment, we were talking about sticks and blowing the letting go into the stick, and a second stick possibly you can use for the claiming of the positive, the gifts out of the situation. But there's something that you've had me do, and this is what I used with my daughter, was actually taking a stone to the fire. So can you explain the difference? Because to me, the stone... Now, I'll just explain to you guys what I think the stone thing is, because it's probably very different. So you bring a stone to the fire and you blow into the stone, very similarly to the sticks, right? We blow into the stone. But in this case, the transformation to me is much clearer in my beginner mindset, because you take the stone and you place it into the fire, and then you let the fire go out over time, and then you go look for your stone. And both times, both for me at that fire ceremony, my fire ceremony, and then at Hillary's ceremony when we were camping, the stone had completely changed. And to me, pulling that stone out of that fire and, rinsing it off from the ash and seeing a completely morphed stone that looks very different than the original one that I put in, that represented the transition very, very well for me, probably better than the sticks do that go away, which is why I guess I kind of equated that to letting go. So can you tell me the difference in your head, or is there a difference about sticks and stones other than them breaking our bones?
Right. Yeah, so that was a very specific process with the stone. And what that process was, and I'm going to have to back up a little bit and give a quick context to the difference in the two processes. So, the transformation with the sticks absolutely happens. It's just that it combusts, it turns to light, and then it becomes ash. It's still an alchemical transformation. That's the end result. And it's the same thing with the stone. It's an alchemical transformation.
Okay.
We just have a solid object left at the end as opposed to powdery ash. Okay. So the stone process, and anybody can do this, the stone process in this example. So you're talking about your daughter. This was a ceremony, and this was marking a transcendence for her, really. It was marking a point through which she crossed a threshold, which another word that we use that we can all wrap our heads around is an initiation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it's an initiatory process, if you will. And We, in this path, as you know, we work with stones. We create our medicine bundles using stones, and we call them mesas. And, as we move through our process in Medicine Wheel, we build our mesa, our medicine bundle, which consists of these stones that in the Quechuan language in Peru, in the high mountains of Peru, the Quero Nation, their language is Quechuan, we call them cuyas. And I love this because cuya actually translates into affection. That's what it means, affection, right? And don't we love our cuyas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When we open our mesa, don't we look at our cuyas and we're like, oh, hi, right? We love them, yes. And we're so affectionate with them.
We've just lost the 15 of the 16 listeners.
Yes,
but
we did.
Thank you for staying with us,
right.
the other.
So there are pet rocks, very special pet rocks. So. Yes. So we have these cuyas. So we work a lot with stones. And in this particular process, and anybody can do this, there are many, many people, and many of you listening, of all of our 16 listeners, who recognize that you're drawn to rocks sometimes. You're out hiking, you see a rock, you pick it up, you got to take it home. You don't know why, but you just feel called to do it. Or you walk into a shop, a crystal shop or a rock shop, and you're attracted to something. There's an energetic there.
Yes.
And so, okay, we can all wrap our head around like, yeah, some stones and crystals are, meaningful to us, whether we realize why or not. We're just called to it. So we work with these stones. So you can find a stone that is meaningful to you, that's being, that's calling you, if you will. That's how we talk about it. The stone's actually calling you. So you responded. And you can work with this to mark an initiation. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about marking an initiation. We're talking about saying, up until this point in my life, this is how I've carried on. This is how I've been. This is how I've been in the world. This is how I've showed up. This has been my role. This has been my persona, my character, etc., etc. And I want to mark that this is now changing. Mm-hmm. And an example, a high-level example, Kirsten, that we can all recognize is that point where, for those of us who have been married, we went from our first marriages, we went from never being married before, right? Being in a relationship, obviously, but not being married through the marriage ceremony or the initiation into marriage. Mm-hmm. That's a crossing of a threshold.
Yes, it is. Okay.
We mark it with big giant celebrations and big white dresses and
right.
big rockin' parties, right?
Right.
Okay. That's an initiation. So it says, I have operated in life like this, and now I'm going to operate like this.
Very clear.
Okay. Another one is recognizing either our culture does not do this very well, but it is huge and significant. I could have a whole soapbox about this all by itself. Maybe it should be another episode. Okay. But initiations with our kids moving into their adolescence, going through puberty. Mm-hmm. Some cultures still have a very marked ceremony for that, but a lot don't. We've lost the art of, honoring our children's initiations into their adolescence and into their teenage years. But anyway, you can look at that as an initiation. When our kids graduate from high school, we do celebrate that graduation. It's a big one, right? And think about what happens when they walk across the stage and they receive that diploma from their principal and they shake hands, or at college from, the dean of the school or what have you. That is another threshold. That's another initiation. And that's ceremony.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Right.
I mean, the whole thing is done in ceremony. I mean, we have the big pomps and circumstance, like the orchestra playing the music.
Everyone's dressed in their finest and the robes and all that.
And they announce your name and you walk across the stage. And it's been dress rehearsed and everything, right? And then you're going to shake hands and then you're going to smile for the photo and then you're going to exit the stage over here. That is an initiatory ceremony.
Okay. Yes.
Okay? So back to the kuyas and the rocks and the fires. Okay. So we want to recognize that there are times in our life where we recognize we're moving through an initiation. Mm-hmm. We recognize, I have operated like this up until now, and now things are changing. Mm-hmm. Whatever that means. There's a bazillion reasons why things change in our life.
Right.
But to notice that this is a marked event. In this process that you did with your daughter, she had a stone to honor and all of what had been in her life to that moment, to blow that into the stone and to also recognize where she was going and to claim that stepping in, that stepping into what is now different for her, and to recognize that. And in this path, we use this process as a process of transcendence and claiming to mark the shift, the big initiation shift. And we call it being tempered or honed by the fire.
Right.
To look at and say, I am now coming through this initiation. I'm crossing this threshold. I recognize that I am going to honor myself and blow that honoring of what has been into this stone. Recognize that I am moving into a new way of being in the world. And I'm going to claim that and allow myself to be honed by the fire, to be tempered by the fire. When we think about using fire for honing or tempering, think about pottery. You create this thing on your wheel and then you put it in the firing kiln. It's being honed, it's being tempered. People who work with metal and create things through having to put the metal in the fire and heat it up and then take it out and then hammer it down and make it into something and then put it in cold water and then back into the fire. That's being tempered and honed by the fire. And the reason that they do that is to make the steel stronger. In the olden days of making swords and all of that, right? All the blacksmiths, they made the swords. It was the true artisan who knew how to temper his steel so that it was the strongest sword so it wouldn't break in battle. Right? So in this process, we recognize that we are allowing ourselves to be honed by the fire. It's a alchemical transformation. We recognize we're using fire to temper ourselves to say, through this journey in my life up until this point, I have grown and cultivated certain things. And now I'm about to embark on this new journey that I don't know what it looks like because it's a threshold. It's a crossing into a new way of being. And I am going to say yes to that journey. And I'm going to allow myself to be honed by the fire, to allow myself to grow stronger in who I am that I've been up to this point and be ready for this next engagement. And we blow that in and we drop that sucker into the fire and we let it be transformed and honed and tempered. And then the next day we go back and we find our stone and we pick it up and we say, wow, I had no idea this is what it was going to look like. And that is symbolic of where we are in our lives. And so powerful, beautiful ceremony.
It was so amazing. I remember we were in the Red Rock of southern Utah, and I had gone through a divorce relatively recently. I'd never really been camping alone. I was a little bit nervous, just the two girls out, and I decided I had gotten a new car that we could sleep in. It was big enough to sleep in. So I was so excited because we suddenly had like a portable tent. And so we just went off on this road, and it was Bureau of Land Management land, so BLM land, and so I knew there was nobody that was, and we had a porta potty and everything. So we go off, and we're on this little trail and this little road, and there was this one thing that I was a little bit concerned about trying to drive up with this car, and so I'm like, how about right here? And I pulled off, and it turned out, it was the craziest thing. So it turned out that there was literally someone had not finished their firewood, because I hadn't packed firewood. I hadn't even thought about that, because I really hadn't planned this whole fire ceremony yet. It was kind of just coming to me, right? And suddenly we're there, and we've got this literally pile of the paid for kind of firewood that you go to the store to buy,
wrapped
and it's all
in saran
sitting.
wrap,
It's all sitting there, and they're literally in the center of the fire ring. They've made a kindling fire thing with the triangle that it's the perfect. It was like a Boy Scout did it, a Girl Scout, yes. So all I had to do was walk up and get my lighter and just go. Psh.
Little did you know you were stealing someone else's campsite.
No, that's not how it ends.
Teasing.
No, I was waiting. I was like, did someone? No, but it was interesting because we did this. I had this idea, and but we had the firewood, so we didn't have to go anywhere else, and we did this ceremony about what she'd been and what did she want for the future, and she put her stone in the fire, and the next morning we came out of the car. I know people are totally laughing at me for this because like what? But anyway, we came out of the car and she went to the fire and dug her stone out and she washed it off. And the first thing she said was, I think it's prettier now. Mm-hmm. I think she thought it was going to be like ruined. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, wow, what has that taught you? What is, what does that make you feel? And so it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hearing that you're saying use the sticks for situations in your life that you are ready to let go of, but that also you want a claiming for, in some sense. I mean, and there are other uses for fire ceremony, but that's one of the big ones. Mm-hmm. And then if you're going to use the stone, it's more about an initiation into a new way of life versus the situational pass through, like we were talking about with my friend. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay,
and I want to say there's no hard and fast rules. So, but from, my years of experience in recognizing the symbology of the ceremony to recognize what we're talking about. And yes, using the stone typically would be more of that initiation representation, and using the sticks is more of that like, wow, that was rough. I'm ready to let go of that and bring it in. Or to, even the stuff that's not so light. Like I used fire ceremony when I went through my divorce, and I made a photocopy of my marriage certificate because, didn't think burning the original was a good idea.
No, but you never know when you're going to need something like that.
Something, right? So I made a photocopy of that and took it to fire and burned it. Mm-hmm. So that was big letting go.
Yeah.
Right? And so recognizing that we can use it even in, those much bigger moments, not just like I'm upset with the manager at my workplace, which is not insignificant. I'm not saying that's insignificant. I'm just saying that we can use it for all across the whole spectrum, from recognizing like, wow, my marriage is over, or like, wow, my kid's really irritating me, so I better go burn a toothpick before I say something I'm going to regret. So, we can run the gamut here.
We can use them multiple times. We can. I mean, I was thinking as you were saying this that, we could, when my friend is finished at this place and she's got a new place to be, she could burn the lease.
Yeah.
And literally like, that is it.
Yep.
Where she needed to let go of the immediate pain, but she could burn the lease, that kind of thing.
That kind of thing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. There's so many different kinds of ways you can have a fire ceremony, and there's not a wrong or a right. And what I will say, what is really relative and really important is your intention. That you come to it with intention that you are stepping into a place of honoring yourself, and you're stepping into a place of reverence with self. So whether you do this outside in a fire pit, or I heat my house with wood in the winter, so many times I'll just go to my firebox and I have, sticks laying around my house all over the place. Well, relegated to the stick area, but
I've been safe at your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take us through what you would do. Yeah. Because I don't think we've necessarily described how to really do this. Will you just take us through the steps?
I will. So you can do it in your house, in your fireplace. You can do it outside in a fire pit. And as adaptable shaman, you can do it in a candle with a toothpick. I have even had one woman in my class say, you can do it by blowing it into a match and lighting it.
Oh, right.
Yes. So recognize that it's about our intention and our reverence, not about how big is our bonfire out in the backyard.
Okay.
And that we can take time to recognize what are we actually doing in this ceremony. Are we claiming something? Are we letting something go? Are we marking initiation? Whatever it might be. And we can blow it into a stick or a toothpick, and we can light that thing on fire, or throw it into the fire, or strike the match, if you will, and let it burn down. So it's about the release. It's about the transformation. It's about the material being combusted into light and being let go. It's about the rock being dropped into the fire and being tempered and honed. It's coming out a different version than what it went in. And how we do this in the path that I practice is we come to fire, whether that's about to light a candle or open your firebox or light an actual fire with the beautiful little teepee built in the center of the ring.
Or a barbecue.
Or a barbecue in the backyard, yeah. And we set our intention by opening sacred space. Now, I have a very traditional prayer that I use in this particular shamanic path, rooted in Andean traditions. But opening sacred space could be as simple as saying whatever kind of prayer is meaningful to you. You could say a prayer to your God that you pray to. You could call in angels. You can call in different lineages that you work with. You can call in the 4 directions. That's what we do. And we call in the spirit energy of Mother Earth and the spirit energy of the cosmos, the heavens, the stars, the sun, the moon. So if you want to practice a traditional prayer, there is one. Actually, let's make a note, Kirsten, and I will provide a sacred space prayer and a fire ceremony handout for anybody who is interested. I have those documents already created.
We'll have that. So we'll have that. I don't know if we can put that up on the, through iTunes and all that. But if you go to our website, which is winesandwonders.com, look for the episode, and there'll be a download there.
There will be a download there.
Perfect.
So we set our space by saying some kind of personal prayer, whatever that is for you, and then we light the fire, whether that is lighting your fire outside in your pit, or opening the door to your fireplace, or striking a match, or lighting the candle, right? We create fire, and then we bring our offering to the fire, whatever that is. And we've already discussed this many times. It can be all manner of varieties. And we bring our offering to the fire. We bring it to and burn it. And then in this path anyway, what we do is we bring our prayers either through kind of gathering up the smoke from the fire, or intentionally, when I do this in my house, in my fireplace, I can't really run my hands through the fire the way I would outside at a fire pit, but I kind of just gather up intentionally the energy from the fire, and we gather it up and we bring it into our bellies to say, let these prayers create right action in my life. And then we run our hands or gather up the energy and we bring it to our heart and we say, let these prayers create right loving in my life. And then we run our hands through for a 3rd time and gather up the energy or the smoke, and we run it over our forehead, which is our 3rd eye, our 6th chakra. And we run it over our forehead and we bring it in and we say, let these prayers create right thinking or right knowing. And then we commence our ceremony, if you will. We're complete at that point, and you can thank whomever you called on in your opening prayer, to let that be your closing prayer, to say thank you to God, Source, Spirit, the earth, the 4 directions, whatever. Whoever you called in, thank them for being there. And then your ceremony is complete. It can be, as you know, Kirsten, as quick as putting a toothpick in the candle and letting it burn down, or as elaborate as, we've been in fire ceremonies together that it's been 30, 45 minutes, depending on the size of our group, and letting it be a much more, elaborate ceremony. So again, there's no right or wrong. It's about your intention and your reverence in showing up.
I'm so glad to be reminded of all this. So I apologize to my daughter and anyone else I've ever advised on this subject, because you got about a 16th of what it really is supposed to be.
I'm sure they got all of exactly what it needed to be.
I was going to say, at least I tried, but well, thank you for that. And so we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we are going to hear the pairing, which in this case, I've decided to pair to the letting go part of this whole thing.
Beautiful.
So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned to hear what type of wine Kirsten will pair with this story right after this.
If you have a friend who calls you and is crying and who needs some support from long distance, consider sending a gift from Uplift Gift. These are curated, beautiful packages of comforting items that will take care of your friend if you can't be there in person. Uplift Gift when words aren't enough.
Now, what wine will Kirsten choose for your table tonight? Here she is.
All right, you guys, we're ready for the conclusion of this episode of Wines and Wonders by learning a little bit about a letting go that created some really great opportunities in the wine industry. So this is a little bit historical, more than some of my other things. I love history, so I'm always looking at the historical part. But this is about this, what you would call a relatively recent phenomenon of direct-to-consumer wine sales. And what that means is, you can go online, depending on what state you live in, you can go online these days, and you can go to your favorite winery in many places around the country, many in California certainly, and you can log in and you can order yourself wine right from that winery, and it will show up at your doorstep however soon they can get it to you safely via FedEx or UPS. And it's a lovely thing, but it's not something that has always been available. And so it required the government stepping out and letting go of control in order to let us do this. So I wanted to look back. I was curious the history of really winery or retail sales direct to consumer. So if you look back at pre-1920, okay, so that's a critical year. So pre-1920, and I got a sample winery at this time, okay? So the winery's called, this is a real winery, it's true. Mm-hmm. So 1920, this winery, it's called the Stonehill Winery, and it was in Missouri. It was the second largest winery in the entire U.S. and the third largest winery in the world.
Wow.
In the 1920s of the U.S.
Beating out France and Italy.
Yes.
Right.
Third largest winery in the world. They owned a forest, a sawmill, a cooperage that used the wood to produce the barrels, a 3-story brick plant for crushing grapes, among other things. They produced 1.25 million gallons of wine from 31 different types of grapes, wow. 31 different varietals. In Missouri.
Did they grow them all?
They grew them.
So they have
Did you guys hear? I'm saying in Missouri. Yes.
Right.
They're growing these grapes, 31 different types of varietals, right? They had won gold medals around the world for their wines. Guess what happened? 1920, law officers showed up at their place, pulled out, uprooted all the vines, destroyed their grape presses because prohibition, the 18th Amendment had been passed, which outlawed the production, importation, or sale of almost all alcoholic beverages in the U.S. And we all know prohibition. I mean, how many movies have we seen with, the whatever, Al Capone and his, everyone, running shooting
illegal,
or running.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Running racket.
Yeah.
Right.
So that happened, right? And what then came about in 1933, the repeal of the amendment happened. But the United States government had now been involved in alcohol restrictions, and they now needed to be involved in alcohol going forward so they thought. So what they did is they gave states the right to manage their own liquor laws, okay? They stepped, and this is 1933, keep in mind, they stepped out of that, but they installed a 3-tier system of alcohol sales, which meant there had to be a producer. The producer was not allowed to sell directly to the consumer. There was a producer, there was a distributor, and then there was a retailer. All of these hands in the pot. I mean, which did give them more places to tax, which was great for the government, right? but it also ensured the safety of a product. I will say there was some good that came out of it because we'd come out of people making, moonshine and blindness and all these kinds of things. So it did regulate. There wasn't product that would get onto the shelves that was tainted.
Right.
For example. Killing people, yes. So that was good. And that's what the government did. It said, okay, you guys can regulate your own things, but you have to have a 3-tier system. So what happened with that was the people that were really, really small, the level that they needed a distributor to notice them was they just weren't going to get noticed if they're making, let's just say, 1,000 cases or less a year. They're just too small. So they weren't going to get national distribution at all, period. Now, other brands that could keep up, say 20,000 cases a year or so, they're going to get a distributor who's got a national footprint, and they're going to get their wines everywhere in the U.S., which is great, right? So what happened was someone brought a lawsuit against the individual states that were controlling the sale of alcohol within their borders in a certain way. So this is now we're fast forwarded. That's what the system was till 2005.
1933 to
2005, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. Supreme Court steps into this lawsuit. The lawsuit is basically saying that states that are allowing, I'm going to make it easier. We're going to talk about a specific state. We're going to say Ohio. Okay, Ohio is allowing their wineries that within Ohio's state boundaries, that are Ohio's wineries, they're allowing those wineries to ship to other Ohio locations. If you live in Ohio, you could order a case of wine, and it would be shipped to you. But Ohio, and I'm totally, this is nothing against Ohioans, and I don't know anything about your specific state's laws, but then Ohio was saying, but no one else can ship into our state from other wineries. So what this Supreme Court ruling came down was not necessarily about alcohol in itself. It was about commerce. And it was about the fact that a state was regulating something. They were allowing shipping inside the state, but not allowing interstate shipping. And there are all sorts of rules for commerce that preclude, you're not allowed to limit between state shipping. Big problem, right? So that passed. And that was in 2005. Now, back in 2005, there were only 23 states, let me read this, make sure I'm doing this. There were 23 of the 50 states, so basically half, had banned all imported into their state, all winery imported wine. They just wouldn't let it happen. 23, so basically half. Now, after that passed, there are only 4 states that ban interstate shipping. We live in one of them.
We do.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
But they don't allow any wineries to ship. No one gets to ship.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother rabbit hole we're not going to go down today. But this is what's so crazy about what this has done for the small wineries in the U.S. In 2018, so this is recent data, direct to sales, that's what they call them, DTC, direct to sales, DTC would be a C, not an S, direct to consumer, DTC, direct to consumer sales exceeded $3 billion.
Whoa.
$3 billion.
With a B, people, with a B.
Yes, and that is 10% of off-premise sales. And what off-premise sales means is not in restaurants or bars. So 10% of the sales of a bottle of something going to someone is now on via direct-to-consumer sales through the shipping. And get this, when you talk about those little, small, adorable, just amazing wineries that are producing less than 1,000 cases of wine, that are the small guys, they made up 42% of those sales.
Wow.
42%
Of 3 billion.
Yeah, and they are getting recognized,
Right.
right? They have a path to someone loving them in Ohio from California. And then if you look at the next level up, so say 1,000 cases to 5,000 cases, which we still would consider extremely small, they had 38% of direct-to-consumer sales. So these are the little guys winning. I just love this by the U.S. government letting go of this control. And so it is real. And what the other thing is the wines that are being sold direct to consumer, guess what? They are getting an average of $38 a bottle for those wines. That is well above what the national average of I've seen lately, around $13.50 a bottle. So amazing.
Right.
So I have a winery. Do you have any questions about that before I choose a winery?
No.
Oh, isn't that fun stuff?
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so I chose a wine today that we have in Utah so that anybody could get this, or at least.
Can Utah ship out?
Utah can ship out.
As long as it's done by the state.
No. Anybody, as long as you have a retail license and the special documentation and shipping license and wholesale license or whatever else, you have to have all those licenses, but you can ship anywhere out of Utah. You can't ship into Utah.
Oh my goodness.
So sorry. But there are some people that are shaking the trees on that.
Yeah.
There's a company that is called Utah Wine Club. And if you guys want more information, if you're from Utah, email Maggie, Maggie, at VIN, V as in Victor, IN, 7000.com if you're interested in hearing more about the Utah Wine Club. Because they actually are making some headway into getting wines that are shipped from wineries direct to Utah. They have a small group of test-cased wineries that are working with them right now. So it's really exciting. But in this case, what I got was a wine that's on the shelves in Utah. But you guys outside of Utah can get this shipped to you if you live in a state, if you're not in one of the other 3 states that doesn't allow it, right? So it's called Road 31 Pinot Noir. It is out of Napa. It's appellated as Napa Valley. This winemaker, his name's Kent Fortner, and he makes 800 cases a year of this. For us in Utah, because we have the small winery discount, which they don't tax small wineries like Kent's as much as they do the big wineries. So we will only pay $34 or so for his bottle of wine here. And if you're outside of Utah, you may pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $44, so about $10 more a bottle. But let me read to you what Men's Journal said about Road 31 as a winery. He specializes in this amazing Pinot Noir, you guys. Fortner, that's the guy's name, quote, Fortner and his green 1966 Ford pickup have turned out a tiny batch, 500 to 700 cases of Pinot Noir that has garnered accolades and a mailing list of rabid fans, endearingly called truckers. With his one-man operation, it is the epitome of specialty small batch winemaking. And that is who this change in the U.S. government and letting go of the control of the sale of alcohol has done for these small types of wineries. And so what you do is you go to his website, it's Road, and then you just use the numerals, road31.com. And you can become a trucker. He is a funny guy, by the way. You'll get updated emails on what's going on with the winery, and it is like Comedy Central. So funny. But you can become a trucker, and then you will get first dibs because he actually sells out every year and he promises to Utah, we get a certain number of cases here in Utah, but he sells out everything else. So you guys outside of Utah become a trucker, and then maybe order a small batch of the wine the first time and enjoy it, and just learn more about the Pinot Noir out of Napa. And most of his grapes come from a region called Carneros, which is near Napa, which is much cooler, which is where Pinot really thrives. So most of his grapes come from there. But anyway, really fun. And that is our wine pairing for the day. Road 31 Pinot Noir. 800 cases of this are made a year, and we appreciate the fact that the U.S. government got out of the way and allowed the states to really start handling this in their own way. And thanks to that, so letting go.
I wonder if they had a fire ceremony.
Does the Supreme Court?
Do they have fire ceremonies?
We should talk to them.
We should. I hope they listen to our podcast.
Yes, anyone who knows any of the Supreme Court judges, would you please turn them on to the Wines and Wonders podcast, specifically this episode number whatever we are.
Yeah, number whatever, fire ceremonies. Great in transitions, you guys. Yes. Call me if you need help.
Yeah. So we're going to have, again, that resource on the website that you can download if you want. Also, we're so happy that you guys are listening. Anything else you'd want to add?
No, I say go out and have a fire ceremony. Oh. You don't need any special reason. Just go have one.
I love
Claim
it.
something.
Claim
let
the spring.
Go. Yeah.
Claim the summer.
Spring.
Claim leaving your house.
2020. Yeah, I know that it's whatever month we're in. What month are we in? March.
March.
Yeah,
wow.
Okay, we're 3 months into the new year, but claim the new year for God's sakes.
Thanks, Dannielle.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
We look forward to sharing a new story and wine with you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Wines and Wonders.